So the goal of today's session is to have community both validate the Food Council's developed food asset map tool, but also to identify individual and community assets that we may not have known about previously, and most importantly, to begin a dialogue about our local food system, to connect community members with each other through conversations about food. And so the information that we receive here is really going to inform the future policy and project work of the Food Council. We hope to touch on different themes of the food charter and to provide information about where community sees any issues and to build on those strengths. And so who is the Charlottetown Food Council? So this was a council established in July of 2018 by the City of Charlottetown, and it's a working group that works in an inclusive and collaborative manner to tackle issues within the local food system through advocacy, initiatives, and policies. The council brings together individuals with different backgrounds, perspectives, and expertise. Current members are Karen Murchison, Morgan Palmer, Phil Ferrero, Brad Duran, Sheena Matthew, Colleen Walton, and Chairperson Brain Plord. And our city support is the wonderful Katrina Christel, the Sustainability Officer for the City of Charlottetown. So this is a wonderful group of people that I have the honor of working with, and they all wear many hats, but are all very passionate about improving our local food system. The mission and vision for the Food Council are listed here, and of course being improving the local system through advocacy and action for the health of community, and the vision being a vibrant community built on the healthy food system. One of the first action items of the Food Council was to develop a food charter. This is a vision statement that describes what our local food system should look like. And this was an important first step to ensure that action in advocacy, policies, and projects remain embedded in the Council's values and goals. Some of the founding principles are listed here. Other important guiding documents for the Food Council's work include the City of Charlottetown's Integrated Community Sustainability Plan and the Let's Talk Food Report. This is a report from an event a few years ago. All of these documents guide the work of the Food Council and can be found on the city's website on the Food Council webpage. So why are we here today, and what is food asset mapping? Food assets are places where people can grow, prepare, share, buy, receive, or learn about food. And so they're the physical locations of strengths that already exist in the community. There are resources. Community mapping is just one way to create a snapshot of our food system and to build awareness around and celebrate the many resources and alternatives that already exist locally to provide for food needs. Food system mapping may take on many forms, such as lists, interactive tools, or visuals, with the main goal of being to inform community members and decision makers of what is already available in the food system and identifying areas of action for improvement. The reason we would want a local food asset map is to identify the existing strengths that we have in our local food system to then engage residents, organizations, and decision makers in conversations about our system. A food asset map will also help the Food Council and other organizations gain a better understanding of where opportunities may be to improve our local food system through partnerships, policies, and projects. So the theme this evening, and the hope of this whole series, is to really touch on a number of themes of our food charter and the food asset map. This evening's theme, Produce, Distribute, and Receive, is meant to highlight the food assets that we have in our food supply chain, but also to bring primary industry members together with community members to share information and perspectives on our local food system. This is an important theme because many local food supply chains operate based on long-standing connections, but also that there are many resources out there that producers and distributors can turn to that they may not already know about. Similarly, there are services and providers that citizens may not already know about. An asset map can therefore be a tool to identify connections within our local food supply chain that can help to build community and local sustainability. So this evening, we are delighted to have Trisha and Soleil, and they are strong community champions within our local food system and community and have a wealth of knowledge to bring to the table. So Soleil Hutchison is the owner of Soleil's Farm, an organic farm tending to 6 acres of vegetables in South Melville, Prince Edward Island. She is committed to growing quality local vegetables using organic, no-spray farming methods that enrich the health of our soils. One principle that is continuously supported by Soleil's Farm is the importance of community and everyone in the food supply chain, from the farmers to the eaters, chefs, land, and community of people who provide their support. Trisha is a strong, and we also have Trisha Viaene. Trisha is a strong advocate for supporting local and small independent producers and encourages the community to do the same through offering eco-friendly, organic, fair trade products at Riverview Country Market. Trisha grew up on an island vegetable farm and is a graduate of the Culinary Institute of Canada and is now a business student at University of Prince Edward Island, bringing her knowledge and love of a local food into every realm of Riverview Market. She loves the close connections that Riverview has fostered between all members of our food supply chain. So I'm so excited to have the opportunity to speak to you both this evening. You both complement each other so well based on the food system, and so we welcome you here. I think that something that the Food Council is hoping to achieve is to improve our local food system in a way that is sustainable, addresses food security, but also builds community around it. This is why we are starting with conversations and mapping out our actual assets. In talking about food assets, my first question I'd like to ask you both would be, do you find that there are any gaps in our local food system? If so, how are you able to bridge these gaps in your own way, in essence, building on existing local assets? And so maybe we'll start with Trisha and then we can move on to Soleil.
Hey, can everybody hear me? Awesome. Yeah, so like when speaking about that, some food gaps that I notice is just an overall education on like how important it is to support local, how healthy it is to eat local, and where you can get all of this produce and lovely products that are available here in PEI. I know it's a great start already with the food map that we're starting here, and I got to take a little peek at it, and I saw all the great places in Charlottetown, and I think another big step would be seeing an island-wide one. I know throughout social media, we've got a lot of great people who share. I don't know if Pauline Howard's on here, but I definitely wanted to say her name because she does an amazing job of sharing all the local food and products available. But I think like a big thing is just educating people on where you can source this, whether it's directly from farmers like Soleil or getting it at local farmers markets or your next door neighbor, because I know there's a lot of people out there who even have, you know, free range eggs available at their farm. And I've seen people ask on Ask PEI, like, where can I get local eggs right around my area? So it's just really getting it out there and really educating people the importance of it and how easy it is, and also how affordable it is too, because I think there's a lot of people, or some people believe that it is more expensive to shop and eat locally, but in reality, it really is not, especially if you can source it directly from the farmer, because that cuts out the middleman anyways. And I know like with us at work, if people ask us, or if we know that there's a better solution for them, we love to send them directly to the farmers if they live in that area. That's so much easier. And like another big thing I like to tell people is like-minded business like myself, there's, you know, Butcher and Butcher, KGL, there's the farmers market. We all support each other, and that's super important in this industry because we are all the little guys and we all need to support each other. We're not competition. We all have the same end goal, and it's really important for everyone to understand that and to work together, because that's our main focus, is getting people reconnected with PEI and with what we offer here.
Thanks, Trisha. I think you make a great point there about supporting each other and building off of those assets. That's really why we're here having that conversation today. And so Soleil, do you want to build on that? And in essence, how do you build on existing local assets to bridge any gaps that you may experience or witness?
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, Trisha, she talked about really great points, and I don't want to repeat them. Basically, as a producer, a local producer, I wanted to kind of take that as my point of view. I think that the island has a lot of great farmers, a lot of great markets, and a lot of the support locally is growing exponentially on a yearly basis. And as a producer, I find that the challenge that I have is distribution. And so having a little bit more of the asset map is a great way, because people will, there's the information out there. But as a farmer, an independent farmer, I have the responsibility to kind of connect with the markets, like Riverview with Trisha, or with, directly to consumers or the farmers market. And if there was actually a local distributor that was like organized and connecting all the individual dots, that would be really beneficial as one of those individuals in the local food system. So what I have done in the past few years is actually work with different farmers so that we could actually together maybe market ourselves as a unit rather than individually. And that really helps with kind of not having to market myself to everywhere. It does really help the farmers. It also helps the consumers kind of connect with more farmers in one go.
I think that's a really good point, and emphasizes again why we're here talking about assets. You're talking about partnering with other people and building on the strengths that we already have, and that clearly goes to show how we can support each other in building a sustainable local food system. So thanks to you both for that. My next question to you both is related to the challenges we faced over the last number of months. I've heard a number of stories from the early months and even well into the pandemic where long-standing methods of connections had changed. Maybe suppliers didn't know necessarily, they didn't have the same methods that they typically use, and the pandemic sort of impacted that. And so what excites me is that now we're here talking about a food asset map. And so something that I'd like to ask you both is, did the COVID-19 pandemic force you to move outside of your usual connections and to foster new connections? And what might be a positive takeaway from that?
I can start here. So COVID was definitely COVID was definitely really interesting. I know, like, we all kind of went in a little panic, and for Riverview, like speaking directly about Riverview, we had to make a lot of changes, and we had to shut the store down and only allow small access to the front and do an online shop. And I think a lot of businesses and even a lot of farmers moved towards having their produce available online so people could directly order it. I saw new farmers as well too. So with COVID brought more time for people to experiment with planting gardens and growing food. And I saw a lot of community sharing, like some people had a lot of zucchini where another person had a lot of tomatoes, and saw a lot of trade-offs, which was like really a positive thing for COVID. And I think what it also did was make people realize how important food is. Like, we kind of sometimes forget that we need to eat and eat really well. And it kind of just puts it back into perspective, like what is important, what's essential. So for Riverview, we actually gained a lot of new customers. We gained a lot of new producers. With a lot of shutdowns over the island and with the communities, people didn't have resources where they could sell their stuff. So we brought in a lot of people and a lot of different things too that we normally wouldn't carry as well. But we just wanted to make sure that even if it didn't really suit our store, I guess, which we kind of carried pretty much everything, we wanted there to be the option that people can still buy this here if you could not get it anywhere else. So COVID was almost a positive thing for us because it just made people really realize the importance of supporting local. And I know that I saw a lot of growth within like little farmers starting again, people really coming together to help each other out. And I know there are like small businesses that really struggled for sure, but I know there's been a lot of support amongst each other and that push to just, support local this year. Don't shop online elsewhere and go across. Like, if you can really get it here, then that's really great. So yeah, COVID's been really interesting in that aspect for sure. And I know too, like with the Charlottetown Farmers Market, they had a lot of hiccups in figuring out how they were going to do this. but I know there was a lot of people supporting them, and we tried to support them too, and keep people informed. I built a Riverview community Facebook page because we're so used to being able to talk to everybody, and we really missed that connection. So I started that little Facebook group so we could share, and I know Pauline was doing that a lot too. It's like, okay, what's available right now, what's going on, what's open, what's limited hours, how can you access this? So yeah, it was really interesting. But honestly, for the most part, I did see a growth in community support and local support, and seeing more people choosing to shop, whether it be at our store or at the farmers market or with Butcher and Butcher or Kent Street Market. Like, I definitely saw growth in there for sure.
But yeah, it's great to hear you talk about all of those, the synergies between sharing and the time that people had to grow and talk about food and realize its importance. Soleil, do you want to build on that and talk about any sort of challenges you may have seen come up or connections that were lost, and how did you build on that in a positive way?
Yeah, COVID was interesting because I usually plan my year out, in February, March, and that was kind of the height of the first wave. And my markets are a little diverse. So I was, I often sell a lot to restaurants. And so at that point, I wasn't sure if I could actually rely on them on that market. And so I basically changed my market drastically and decided that because I wasn't sure if I could actually have my product indoors or sold to restaurants, I went to a CSA model where it was direct to consumers. So my main market this year was a CSA, and that was due to COVID. The thing with COVID is that, yeah, there was a crazy increase in local demand. However, again, there was a lot of stress on local farms to actually organize themselves accordingly. And so again, there was just so much uncertainty, and, you're planting seeds. And at first I was like, oh, maybe I should plant a small garden. But over time, I realized that there was the demand. I didn't know how I was actually going to supply that demand, but I'm going to have faith that I can get my veggies out there some way. So, the demand was there. I could see it. But it's like organizing and finding the time to actually supply customers and consumers in the most efficient way for myself and for them. Like, efficient, effective, and reliable way is always the challenge.
Yeah, that's great. And I would echo, I think you both kind of brought up how hopefully the fact that food is really essential, and it's an essential service, our system. And I think that people started to recognize that a bit more over this past year. And I think that the isolation of our island perhaps had folks reflecting on what local food sovereignty really means here in PEI as well. And I think you both touched on that. So it's great to hear that there are always ways of turning things into something positive. I think this would lead me to my next question then. So how do you see us, community, whether it's community as a whole or specific points in the food supply chain, food council, organizations that work in food, how do you see us building on our local food assets to build a brighter future for local food sovereignty and a sustainable local food system? Maybe we'll switch it up. Maybe Soleil, you can go first, and then Trisha next. Or we can keep the same flow going. It's up to you guys.
Oh, it's okay. I just wasn't expecting it. Yeah, I think I've been actually kind of talking about that during the whole thing. I think distribution and kind of organizing ourselves so that we're much more of a unit rather than individuals, like kind of doing all of our, like, supporting each other. I don't want to say that, like, the support is incredible. I mean, like, Riverview Country Market is amazing, supporting farmers. But if we were actually much more of a unit, organized, rather than me directly, marketing to individuals, individual markets, individual consumers, would be really beneficial. Again, like we have the demand, the local demand has been increasing. And also I feel like over the years, the farmers have actually been able to, there's more farms, there's more diversity, variety, and throughout the season, not just like in the heat of the growing season. I just remember like about 10 years ago, there was a Buy PEI local store that was created. I think it was close to UPEI. And I think they lasted a year because there was no supply as much. And I think that has changed over the years. And we are I think much more prepared and able to supply that demand with a little bit more of organization, local distribution.
Yeah, Soleil definitely makes the best points for sure. And I know when she talks about the distribution as well, I know when my family, back when we were farming vegetables, we struggled. This was 15 years ago, at least, or more. And we struggled to get our produce out there. We grew enough to supply, we used to supply Sobeys and Superstore. And the struggle there was, the little amount that they wanted to pay for your product. And then us as being farmers doing everything from growing it to taking care of it, harvesting, packing it, and then having delivered on top. I remember doing, starting at 7 a.m, and then we were delivering produce at 11 at night just to get it out there. So definitely having a really good system where we can get farmers' produce in stores or somehow get people out to the farmers' farms to be able to get the supplies that they need and the produce that they need. And again, working together, getting it out there, maybe some more government support with funding for farmers as well as opening smaller businesses. I know there's some out there, but I know that there's a lot of hiccups. I know, for example, Mackenzie's Produce in Stratford is trying to get some permits to be able to open something like a shelter actually for their produce, because they lay it on wagons, which is really tough in the heat. Soleil would definitely know that things wilt really quickly, and they're having problems with getting permits. And this shouldn't be issues that we're having or people should be having. We should be having as much support as possible to produce as much as we can on this island, because we're just so lucky with the soil that we have and the people that we have, and even the small population, that it's so easy to make this work if we all just work together and the government really saw, the profits and how well the economy would do if we could just put our heads down and get a really good system together. And I think, again, the food map is a really good start, but there's definitely so much more that we could do.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And this map really would be that first step. And what I'm hearing from both of you is there is that local demand there, and it's about how we recognize the local assets and support our distributors and producers in a way that doesn't create that duplication, that they're able to get the work that they want done in a way that reaches community and supports and builds on community. And so I think this is where sort of the Food Council hopes to come in and support some of the issues you've raised, and through policies, projects, and improving that system. We have about a minute or two left, so maybe I'll leave it out to both of you to contribute any last final thoughts before we move on to the next section of the session.
Yeah, I only had one more point that I wanted to say, is that I think it's really just access, farmers having access to the markets without spending too much energy, and then consumers and markets themselves, like Riverview and farmers markets and other little businesses, having access to the food without too much energy spent is, I say, the biggest hurdle. And so this map, I think, is definitely the first step. I would love to see something kind of I don't know, a local food hub or a distribution that would kind of take on that role to help connect all of those dots, but access, so that we can do what we do best, like a Riverview, you know, market their stuff, and consumers eat and farmers grow, you know, the food. Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to see that.
And I would say two things quickly. Education, just getting it out there, like however the best that we can, if it's like sharing it on Facebook or having a website that really just educates people, even on seeing the economic benefits, the health benefits, like all around there. It's just it's a win-win situation to be supporting each other and support local. So yeah, that one's definitely a big one. And I think I just lost my other point that I had there. So yeah, but education for sure. Oh, and tourism, using tourism as an asset to farmers, because, you know, we're a tourism island and we have so many people here come in the summer, not this year, obviously, but, you know, incorporating farming tourism, like offer buses that go out and see these farms and then be able to take home some sort of veggie package or product. It doesn't have to be a farm, it can be like a producer, and really just getting to see that, I think would be an amazing opportunity for people to get out there and see how it works.
Wow. Well, thank you both very much for this wonderful dialogue. I hope that everyone is excited to listen to these two, as I am. Before moving on, I obviously want to point out the obvious that you both are food assets within our local food system. And just this is the goal of these conversations, is to recognize that. And I see a lot of names on here that would be assets in our community as well. And so I think you both raised, how can we support each other in a way that builds a stronger local food system? So we'll have more time in the question period to dive a little deeper and answer some of the questions that folks may have, but we're now going to move on to the next section. And so I would like to now introduce Charlottetown's food asset map. So we have created a short little video to describe the interactive tool. There will be an updated version available on the website later, and we're just gonna pull this up here now. And this is going to just describe a little bit of a snapshot session too. So welcome back, and thanks for contributing to those conversations. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pull up the Menti answers flowing in for that last final question, but it really is important to understand what people's perspectives are of the best food asset in their neighborhood or community as part of the validation process. That's why we're here. But it's also great to think about what the most important food asset is to you and why that may be. And also, is it something that everyone has access to, or only some groups and some neighborhoods? So something that we can all think about leaving today. And then, you know, holding Food Council accountable, how can we ensure that everybody has that same access? So as we are going through this the next 10 minutes question and answer period, I will let you know that there is a concluding activity. And so there is another Mentimeter question. Hopefully you're able to access. I think the link and code are all in the chat box, so you should all be able to see that there. So you can go there and answer the sort of our third round of questions as a concluding activity. You can answer it over the course of the next 10 minutes. How can we all celebrate and support our local food assets more as a means of fostering a thriving, healthy local food system? And you can sort of throw that in general or more tangible terms. In my group session, we talked about what are the tangible ways that we can do some of those things. So I'll leave you to do that activity over the course of the next 10 minutes. And while we do that, we will also be opening the question and answer period up with Soleil and Trisha up. So I think we have some questions that have come in, and perhaps.
And for those of you who do have any questions, please feel free to just either raise the hand, wave your camera, or just mention in chat. We'd love to really put our two featured guests here on the hotspot and hear from them. So if you've got a question, let us know. We're all here for you at this point. And actually, if it's all right with you, do you mind if I just go through the first two questions for our Mentimeter for demographics so that we've got that? So it wasn't, it was broke, but we fixed it. Wanted to know what neighborhood everyone was joining us from. And we've got a pretty good distribution. East Royalty, Hillsborough, West Royalty, and Parkdale not representing, but we got some folks from the 500 lot, myself here in downtown Charlottetown, north of Houston, outside of Charlottetown, almost 40%, which was great. And that second question, what part of the food system do you feel that you most identify with? 53% are eaters, most identifying with, while 24% are growers, 6% are retailers, or 6% are distributors, and 12% are other. And I'd be interested if there's anyone who did identify as other to put what they were in the chat. If you were an other, say other, and what you were. And I'm going to stop sharing there and pop back in. And again, we've got some great talent around the room. If you've got something that you'd like to ask of either of our wonderful guests, Trisha and Soleil, who have taken some time, let me know here in chat, or just wave your hand at the camera. I'll bring you in. You can ask your question live in person. Or am I going to have to put you up?
What?
Sorry.
Oh, I have loads of questions. So if we're waiting, I've got lots of questions. But one thing that I would like to ask would be, how can we engage some of the non-food related sectors, businesses, the private sectors, other sort of areas of our system, whether provincial or in the city, in the discussion about supporting local producers and distributors, suppliers, and also eaters? How can we, all the sectors, support that increased access of local food? Sort of like that cross-sectoral collaboration, but what are some of the things that, who do we need to tap in, and how can we do that? Any thoughts to that?
I could say that maybe there could be incentives for businesses to support employees. I know through our CSA program, we have had local businesses like buy for their employees a season of vegetables, right? The money went right back to, providing the food for their employees. It was great. So I think that that could be one thing.
That's a great point. Thank you, Krista. Another question that I would have would be for the Food Council and other food-related organizations, what would be one action that they can take to address how our farmers distribute and produce food in a way that supports them, but also that how can the eaters and consumers, but we're not trying not to use that word, eaters receive the food in a way that's equitable. And so what's an action that the Food Council can do to sort of address that in a way that accounts for things like food security, but builds that community in a way that has our system thriving? And Soleil and Trisha, feel free to weigh in. We've got you here as the experts tonight.
I have a point of, and I think Soleil would know this too, is a lot of times there's, vegetables or fruit that we would call the ugly vegetable that often gets, or not, maybe not so often now, but things get left behind that really don't need to get left behind. And having a way to collect these vegetables, I guess I'll keep calling them, having a way to collect those so those can be distributed to those who cannot afford, prime fresh vegetables. But I know, like at our store, for example, we are really picky on how our produce looks, but we have a little kitchen within our store, and so anything that we kind of like pick it up and say, would I buy this sort of situation? And if it's got some defects or if it's starting to go rotten or whatever, it goes to our kitchen first, and we utilize it in any way that we can. So it's kind of why we have soups. Like that's the only reason we started doing soups. We kind of called it like kitchen sink soups, because it was, how are we going to use this food up? And then it kind of just started to, like, people really enjoyed it. And so we kind of kept doing that. So having a way to collect this produce, so that's, you know, the seconds, and get that out there to people who maybe can't afford it at its regular price, would be a really good start.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful answer. And it's actually a really good segue. Mike just wrote in the chat box an awesome question. He's particularly curious and interested in reducing food waste. And so this would be specifically perfectly good food that could be sold. So just exactly to your point. So he's wondering how much of an issue that it is for both of you, and how much of what you sell, grow, goes off before it actually is sold and consumed. And I, as a follow-up to that, is there something maybe that the Food Council could do, or other food-related organizations, I guess, to support some of that? Any challenges you may face there?
Yeah, I mean, like, seconds have always been kind of a little bit of a challenge of how do I kind of market those. So I think I would kind of voice what Trisha was talking about earlier about education. So that's something that the Food Council can kind of take up, is educating the consumer that something that might not be like sightly as what we were kind of like what we're used to might actually be even more delicious than something that is actually really beautiful and found, you know, in a grocery store that is from somewhere else. So education, also, like, I mean, with my CSA, I'm able to actually paint a picture of my product. And some years, certain things don't grow as well because of myriads of reasons. And so educating them as to what happened, and even though they might be ugly, they might be really tasty. So over the years, I've found a few tricks as to potentially which consumers would actually prefer, like, which ones of my markets would actually not mind a little bit of nicks here and there, or seconds, and which ones prefer the top quality products, so that I limit, or even preferably eliminate, any of food waste.
When we were branched off into our little groups, we kind of touched a little bit about this too, and how I thought it would be beneficial if Prince Edward Island or Charlottetown could have some sort of food van that would go around to businesses or farms to be able to pick up these seconds. Maybe the government would subsidize a little bit to the farmers, like make sure we get a little something out of it, and bring those to the places that really need it, to the people that need it, soup kitchen, gifts from the heart. And that would be so much easier, because I was saying that, you know, sometimes in the run of the day at Riverview, we're so busy. It's really difficult for us to have a staff member leave and go and do these things. But if we had the means to be able to get it out there, we would do it so much more often. And I know, like I said, we try to limit waste as much as we can by making soups and sandwiches and whatever else we can do. And then we have a farmer that picks up the rest of our produce, our compost, and he feeds his animals with it. So we don't have to honestly dump any of our food at all, because if it's not going into soups, we have a farmer that picks it up to feed his animals. But I would love to see a better support system within Prince Edward Island that would pick this food up and send it off to where it needs to go.
Those are great points. And I think that's such a nice way to close out this session. I think that finding those ways are really in part assets in our community, right? So if there's a barrier, transportation, someone can't access that food, how can we look at our food asset map and look at the partnerships that may exist and to connect people to get that food, and to support the producers and distributors to get that food out? Maybe there are seconds. How can we find ways? So I think that's a really nice way to close out. I think that we will pull up some of the responses from as our wrap-up questions now, just so that we can see that. While we're looking at that, something I do want to touch up on, and it came up in the breakout room that I was in, where we're talking about Charlottetown specifically, because this is the Charlottetown Food Council. This is a pretty unique community, though, here in PEI. There are different levels to community, so I think it's important to think about that. And for this question, your community might be Prince Edward Island, it might be Charlottetown or the municipality you live in, but it also might be your neighborhood. And something that we've talked a lot about as Food Council members is the neighborhood level here in Charlottetown. What does access to food look like? It may look very different from one neighborhood to the next. And so I'm looking at these answers and they're great. And this is just a way that we can validate some of the information we've collected and the map. Look at that. We've already touched on a lot of the things that Trisha and Soleil have come up with. So thank you everyone for participating in that. That's just wonderful to see. Neighbors, yeah, great contributions. And so I think that, and this was the second question. I guess that was the first question that we asked. How can we all celebrate and support our local food assets more as a means of fostering a thriving local food system? Some of these are really great answers too. Supporting our local farmers, more outdoor markets, local events, and local events. That touches on a good point. In a later session, we'll be talking about how we take a local event sort of to celebrate local every single day. So there's links between all of these, the next three sessions to this one. But I think this is a good start, and we've had some wonderful experts here, Trisha and Soleil. I want to thank you so much for participating. I will pull up, I think I have a final slide there that just highlights some of the reminders that we've got. We do have an evaluation survey that will be going out for you after this session, either this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. And so that will be there. If you could complete that, it will just help us as a food council to sort of work through what webinar engagement is like, and hopefully we can provide more sessions in the future. We also have a community food questionnaire that is out and available for you to complete. If you haven't already, please do so. We'll link that in the email that we do send out, and it is available on the city's food council website as well. We previously had a survey open back when we were originally hosting these workshops and planning away. We closed it down, and now we've reopened it, and it will be open until December 18th. So please share it with your networks. We would love to hear from community in that way as well. And a reminder that we do have other sessions coming up. So there are 3 more sessions to go, all covering different themes. We have another session on this Wednesday at 2 p.m. and we'll be talking about learning and celebrating our local food assets and what that means. And we've got some great panelists lined up. We're really excited about that session too. And then the following 2 are the following week, December 1st and 3rd, I believe are the dates, but they're all on the website as well, and we'll link them in the email. And finally, our food asset map launch. So stay tuned for that. That will be in the early 2021 calendar year. We hope to launch that as a tool for you to use, share among your networks. But in the meantime, if you do have any sort of feedback or ideas or comments related to the map or these sessions, please feel free to reach out to us. We do have a website. You can find us easily at charlottetown.ca/foodcouncil. And we hope to have some sort of way that you can give us some feedback with the video, the Loom video that will be highlighting the snapshot of the asset map that you did not see this evening. I know you saw it without sound briefly, but that's okay. So with that, I think we will close this evening. We're a few minutes behind, but not too far behind, and we sorted out some of those tech details. So thank you so much, Trisha and Soleil, for participating this evening. It was so great to have you here and start us off with these conversations. This is just the first step, and we hope to see you at the next session. Thanks, everyone.